So now we're back to 2 o'clock on our analog clock. So when we use a clock to tell time or to measure time, we also talk about minutes. And that's why we have the long hand of the clock. In this case, it's blue. And the long hand of the clock is called the minute hand. The minute hand tells us how much time has passed after the hour, specifically how many minutes. So when we're telling time, we first always look at the short hour hand of the clock, and then we look at the long minute hand of the clock to tell us how many minutes have passed since it was exactly 2 o'clock on the hour. So now the hands of our clock have moved again, and let's read the time on our clock. Well, the short hour hand is pointing to the 2, so that means that it is the hour of 2 o'clock. Now the minute hand is pointing at the 1. So would we say that the time is 12 and 1 minute? You might be tempted to say that, but that's not correct. There are 5 minutes between each of these big numbers. So when the minute hand is at the 1, that actually means that 5 minutes have passed since it was exactly 2 o'clock when the long hand was pointing at the 12. Each of the dots on this clock represents 1 minute, or 1 minute, yes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. If we counted all of the dots and went all the way around the clock, we would realize that there are 60 dots in total. Each dot represents a minute because there are 60 minutes in 1 hour. So the minute hand has to make 1 full trip around the clock for the hour to change from 2 to 3. So if each of these big numbers means another 5 minutes have passed, it's like skip counting, isn't it? And it's like skip counting by 5 when we're thinking of the minutes of the clock. So here at the 60, no minutes have passed, but at the 1, 5 minutes have passed the hour. 10 minutes. 15 minutes. Why? Well, let's count to see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Skip counting by 5. 20 minutes. Add another 5, 25 minutes. So 25 minutes have passed by the time you get to that 5, because 5 groups of 5 makes 25. 30 minutes have passed at the 6. 35 minutes have passed at the 7. 40 minutes have passed at the 8. 45 minutes have passed at the 9. 50 minutes have passed the hour at the 10. 55 minutes have passed at the 11. And by the time you get to the 12, that means 60 minutes have passed. This minute hand has made 1 trip around the clock, and the hour will have changed from 2 to 3 by the time those 50 minutes have passed. So we can use our skip counting by 5 skills when we are reading a clock, because even though this clock tells you each group of 5 minutes on the clock with a 5 and a 10 and a 15 and a 20 and a 25, most analog clocks do not have these small numbers telling you how many minutes have passed around the outer edge of the clock. Most of them only have the big numbers, so we need to learn to know that at the 1, it means 5 minutes. At the 2, it means 10 minutes have passed past the hour. At the 3, it means 15 minutes have passed. Always adding another 5 as the big numbers get bigger by 1. So really, think of your skip counting chain of 5, just like this. And what the arrows would say after each group. Those arrows would be the same as the 5-minute increments on the clock. I don't have a skip counting chain, but I can put my 5 bead bars together to demonstrate that. So now let's read the time on our analog clock using both hours and minutes. Let's keep in mind that we always read the time starting with the short hour hand. So In this case, the short hour hand is located between, or just after the 3, between the 3 and 4. So that means that we know it is the hour of what? 3 o'clock. It won't be 4 until it's pointing directly at the 4. That's when the hour will change. So it's 3 o'clock. Now let's have a look at the long minute hand. Well, it's pointing at the 5. But we know that each of these big red numbers represents 5 minutes having passed. So it's not 5 minutes after 3. It is 5. Let's skip count together. 10, 15, 20, 25 minutes after 3, because 5 groups of 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5 plus 5 plus 5 plus 5 plus 5 makes 25. But lucky for us, on our training clock, we can actually see the number 25 right there. So we know that 25 minutes have passed since it was exactly 3 o'clock. So the way that we say the time is, well, there's 2 ways that you could say it. You could say it's 3:25, or you could say it's 25 past 3. 3:25 or 25 past 3. 25 minutes past the hour of 3 o'clock. Now let me write that for you the way that you would see the time on a digital clock. In the place for hours, you have a 3, and in the place for minutes, you have 25, showing that it is 3 o'clock and 25 minutes have passed since it was exactly 3 o'clock, making the time 3:25, or 25 past 3. Shall we try another time, reading our clock using both the hour hand and the minute hand? Let's do it. What time is it now on our clock? The short hour hand is between the 11 and 12, so we know that the hour is 11. Now let's look at the long minute hand. It's pointing to the 6, and we know that 6 groups of 5, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 makes 30. We can even see the little 30 right there confirming it. So that means that 30 minutes have passed since it was exactly 11 o'clock. So we could say it's 11:30 or 30 minutes past 11. But there's another way of saying this particular time, the time when the minute hand points to the 6. When the minute hand points to the 6, that means that 30 minutes of the 60-minute hour have passed, and that means that the minute hand has moved exactly halfway around the entire clock, and it is halfway through the hour of 11. We can think of our clock just like one of our fraction insets, this one in particular, and we know that when you take a whole and you divide it into 2 equal parts, each of those parts are called 1/2. This represents 30 minutes and is 1/2, and this represents 30 minutes. It is the other half. So when the minute hand has moved halfway around the clock, we can read the time like this. It is 1/2 past 11. 1/2 past 11. So many options, people. It's 11:30, it's 30 minutes past 11, but usually the most common way that people will say the time when the minute hand is pointing to the 6 is 1/2 past. It is 1/2 past 11. Let's do another example. I'll move it in front of you. You can see the minute hand turning. What time is it now? It is 1/2 past 12. Let me show you how that is written. Or 12:30. A 12 in the place for hours and 30 in the place for minutes. 12:30 or 1/2 past 12. Now it is 2:30 or 2:30 because the minute hand has traveled halfway around the clock and halfway through the hour. Half past 2 would look like this on a digital clock. And that's how you would write 2:30 or 2:30. All right, let me show you one more bit of fraction action with the clock. Let's try this. Let's go backwards. Can't go backwards in time unless you're giving a lesson. All right. What time is it now? The hour hand is pointing to the 12, so we know that it's the hour of 12 o'clock. The minute hand is pointing to the 3, so we know that 15 minutes have passed since it was exactly 12 o'clock. 5, 10, 15, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, making the time 12:15, or 15 minutes past 12. Which looks like that. But we're going to turn our clock into a fraction yet again. Not of halves this time, but of quarters. Do you remember that when you take a whole and you divide it into 4 equal parts, that each of those parts is called a quarter? So in 1 hour, there are 60 minutes. And if you take the number 60 and you cut it into 4 equal parts, the number you would end up with is 15. So each of these quarters represents 15 minutes. And when you put them all together, 4 groups of 15 make 60. So another way of saying this time is, well, the minute hand has moved a quarter, 1/4 of the way around the clock. So we can say that it is a quarter past 12. A quarter past 12. Now, I'll move it again. Or 12:15, obviously, but here we go. Now our minute hand, since starting at the very top when it was exactly on the hour at 12 o'clock, has moved 1, 2, 3/4 around the clock, and there's only 1/4 left to go until it turns into 1 o'clock. So we could read the time here as 1/4 to 1. 1/4 to 1. So we're still in the hour of 12, but when we say 1/4 to 1, that means that we are 15 minutes, 1/4 of the clock before it turns into 1 o'clock. 1/4 until 1. All right. That concludes our lesson on telling time on an analog clock today. I think you have some worksheets to practice your new time telling skills inside your week 10 package. And before I go, I'm just going to show you what this time that we have on the clock would look like on a digital clock right now. So you could either call it 12:45 because it's 45 minutes past the hour of 12. Or you could say that it's 1/4 to 1 because there is only 1/4 of the clock left for the minute hand to travel until it turns 1 o'clock. All right, my time travelers. I will see you again soon for another math lesson.